Let's jump into COVID-19 because there's
Sure.
so many unknowns. There's so many myth, facts, and it's funny. You and I were chatting yesterday briefly just to prepare for today. And if you
Yeah.
remember, I kept having to stop myself because I kept starting to ask you questions that I wanted answers for my own family's well-being. My wife has questions. I have questions. I have
Yeah.
questions about my kids. And if you, no matter where you look, every day it changes. So that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons we wanted to speak with you today, with your expertise, is at least separate the myth from the fact. And I think one of the biggest things jumping off is, what is the craziness with the whole mask situation? We've now been guided towards, okay, yes, cover your face with anything. We're hearing they may even have laws that you can't go out in public without some type of covering. But we were told from the very beginning, from some big authorities, please
Yeah.
don't buy masks, please don't wear them, you don't need
Right.
them, you shouldn't use them. What has this been all about?
I know. And Drew, this has been kind of a recurrent theme with the whole COVID-19 situation, is that information changes, it's contradictory, and it's very hard to keep up to date on what's true and what's not. And I will say, as my little disclaimer is, and as you know, as you just said, I go on the news a lot talking about different health issues, wellness issues, and for the past several weeks, it's all been all about COVID-19. But the disclaimer is, anything that I say to you now, it may turn out to be untrue a week from now or even a few days from now, but we're just going by, the best that we can given the information we know right now. So regarding the masks, it's a difficult issue because part of what's going on right now is we are dealing with sort of best case, what we need, what we have right now, the resources we have right now. How can we deal with the situation in that sense? So the truth is, if we had, in some magic world, unlimited amount of masks, then from the beginning we would have been told wear masks, because no, it's not a perfect seal. Yes, little bits of air and particles may get into a mask if you're not wearing it right, if you haven't been trained to wear it correctly, but it's still better than nothing, and it's still going to give you some protection. So even from day one, if we had unlimited amounts of masks, yeah, everyone should have been wearing a mask, but we did not.
That raises a concern, though. And
Yeah.
because that's where I had a feeling this might go, because I've been hearing more and more about this. But we were told by top medical professionals, by politicians, by people very high up, that there was no reference that we don't have enough of them. And maybe that was the case, and we're hearing more and more about that.
Yeah.
But it was never stated early on that please don't wear a mask. Yes, it's very helpful and can protect you, but we don't have enough even for the frontline responders. That was not what was told. So what we're hearing more and more of from a lot of people in the medical community that I've spoken with, and you're kind of saying the same thing, correct me if I'm wrong, is that there was a supply and demand issue, but that was not clearly disclosed with the medical advice we as a society were given.
Yeah, and I think it is a nuanced discussion. So it's not that masks are very helpful. They are, if you think about common sense wise, they are probably helpful. Have there been large scale studies in a situation like this to prove masks are definitively helpful or not? They really haven't been. And there is some truth to the fact that if you're not trained in wearing the mask, and almost more importantly, taking off the mask. I mean, my kids now are wearing masks, and then they're touching the outside of the mask, where theoretically the germs are, and then touching other things. And so, if you're not using it properly, it's certainly not ideal protection. I still think it's better than nothing. But you're right. There was a little bit of if we tell everyone to wear a mask, we're not going to have enough masks. And that is what happened. Even though we didn't tell people still hoarded masks, got lots of masks. Yeah. And it's not even that, but in general, we just didn't have the numbers we needed, which is why the frontline workers were in such, and are still in such dire straits in many parts of the country and many parts of my city here, New York, where, we're reusing masks that in the past we would have changed a mask for every single patient encounter. Now we're being told to use the mask until they literally fall apart. That's certainly not the ideal situation. So the mask question is a difficult one, but yes, the most recent recommendation now is don't try to get the heavy duty hospital N95 grade mask, but some kind of covering. And I also want to point out this also, people think, well, I'm wearing the mask really to protect myself. I think more the data suggests it's really you're protecting other people, because if you have COVID-19, but you don't realize it because you're not having any symptoms, you could still be spreading it. Whereas if you wear a mask, you're less likely to spread it to other people. So it's more of an altruistic kind of maneuver. But either way, it's
Well, we're
something.
all in this together, or we're not. I mean, we don't.
Yes,
So,
that's for
but
sure.
I was shaking my head before, not towards you, but even basically confirming what
Yeah.
we've already been hearing is that
Yeah.
in the best case, the nicest way is to say that we were told a myth, and that's a nice soft way of saying it. But really, we
Yeah.
were all lied to. We were told there's no benefit to these, and the answer really was we don't have enough. And instead of saying that, so and I think people are tuning into that very heavily, obviously. Do you
Yeah.
think we're doing enough right now with everything you're seeing? I mean, you're in New York, obviously.
Yeah.
Between us, we're kind of in the two of the top hot spots. That's nothing to brag about. You're in New York, I'm in Los Angeles, California right now. So we're certainly seeing it more than other parts of the country, but it's going there. As a nation, are we doing enough?
Well, I think that those of us who are in the epicenters see it and feel it in a very real way. So I think where we're living, at least where I'm living in New York City, people really are, for the most part, strictly adhering to the social distancing, staying at home, not having any large gatherings, things like that. You see it in the grocery stores where you're waiting online for an hour outside of Whole Foods. The line isn't even that many people, but they're spread out by distance the line, and they're only allowing a very small number of people in the store at one time. So a lot of extreme measures are being taken, and they're being stuck to, and they're working. We are seeing, and I want to knock on wood, but it looks like the last few days we have reached a plateau in New York. We're all hoping it lasts. But it looks like it's working. For the rest of the country, I don't know, because it's not as immediate to them, or they don't feel it as much, if they're being as strict in terms of those guidelines. But it's so important for them to do that, because what happens in New York and LA could very easily happen in all of the other parts of the country. It
Yeah.
just may be delayed a bit.
Well, and look at New Jersey, where I grew
Yeah.
up, right on connected to New York, and I
Yeah.
mean, the amount of cases there. I don't know the latest as of today, but it was just staggering. My heart sank the other day.
I
A
know.
small area, landmass, and the number of cases. So that's one of the things that's just so mind-boggling about this. And it's something I've tried to and I've discussed this with other people, when you try to find bright spots, and you have to, if there's nothing bright about people dying and suffering, of course, but you have to say, okay, how are we going to pull through this and get through it? And
Right.
when you look at all of the tragedies through history, and 9/11 comes up, and you have, massacres around the world, in Rwanda, and all throughout history, you have, the Holocaust, all these horrific things, slavery. There's so many horrific tragedies, but the difference here is that those were all very deliberately man-made and man-pursued. It was just, evil humans continuing to, oppress, hurt, and harm good people who didn't want to. This is an interesting one. I mean, do you know of anything in any type of memory that where it is the whole world? I mean, you have people saying it doesn't discriminate. I mean, you want to say it doesn't discriminate against wealth unless you're who's the billionaire who was out on his yacht doing Instagram?
Right.
Was it Geffen or someone? So I guess to a degree, if you're one of the handful that can really do that, but
Yeah.
there's no border that's going to protect us per se if we don't get a grip on this.
Right. Yeah. No, it has been interesting, and it has been unlike anything I've certainly ever experienced in my lifetime. And I was in New York during 9/11, and I was working at a hospital and went down to ground zero that day, the day after, the week after, to try to help out. And as horrific a situation as that was, there was at least some kind of finality, or you knew that it happened, it's over, and now we have to recover from it. And of course, there was some fear, especially early on. When is there going to be another attack? Is it going to happen again? But that was less likely. This was something where we really don't know when it's going to end. I mean, as I said, like, we've seen a glimmer of hope just the last 2 or 3 days in New York. But before that, they said maybe the peak is in 3 weeks. Maybe this is going to last till July. I mean, like, we really don't know and didn't know, and the rest of the country doesn't know. So I think that's what's creating so much anxiety for people, is that we're not sure when this ends. Like, yeah, we can deal with the social distancing and staying at home now, but can we do that for 3 months? Or like, it's a lot of unknowns. And you're right, it is that great equalizer where I was watching the news a couple weeks ago, and they had the Chancellor of Germany, and then they had the British Prime Minister, and it was like, is this a bad horror film? Like, is this really happening? Where, it's one of those doomsday type movie scenes, but it's real.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it's an interesting thing because, you use the words on your own, anxiety and unknowns.
Yeah.
And look, I've experienced that, in certainly in work, in our environment, what we do here normally and how many lives that impacts, speaking to people that we work with, partners, brands, clients, different things, my own family interacting from, and the difference between, someone, a mom or dad who's now all of a sudden homeschooling all their kids or not leaving the house, the impact and strain and stress that it has on kids, that differs. We were going to touch base on that. You have two children. I have a small bunch myself. And those are some of my questions as well for you, because that's the other thing that weighs on parents tremendously, as I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
Your two children are very close in age to my 12-year-old daughter. And that's where my wife and I have seen the most, where it pains us to see a 12-year-old girl who's just cut off overnight from all social interaction and activity. Yeah, she's online schooling, but we've gone from, hey, get off the electronics to now, hey, get on your computer and try to Zoom your friends, and it's like you see the difference, and it breaks your heart.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think, well, first of all, children react very differently. Each child kind of reacts differently and has different ways of coping and different abilities to express their emotions. So some kids are keeping it inside. Some kids are, opening up, and it is always better to open up if you can, but not every child is like that. I think it's an interesting time. I think it is also, like we were talking about, trying to find those positive, spins on things, or the silver linings. In a way, many of us are spending more time with our kids, by force, because we're home, we're working from home. And of course that can be challenging, but I know for me that, we have bonded in a different kind of way. And usually they're gone from, they commute for school. So they're gone from like 7:20 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Yours are 10 and 12, right? You have
10 and 12. Yeah. And, by the time kids get home from school, normally it's pretty much shower, homework, dinner. You're lucky if you get 20 minutes of actual conversation, and then they're going to bed. Whereas now they're around a lot, and it's, they don't have to commute to school, so they're getting up later. We can have a more civilized breakfast. So there are positives to it. I think my kids so far are handling it fairly well. I have two boys, and they're kind of opposite personalities. So the younger one loves the fact that he's not working as hard, quite frankly. He has less hours, less homework. The older one is a bookworm, so he's anxious to get back to real school. But even he is, doing what he needs to do with the Zoom classes and chatting with his friends when he can. And, I think even for them too, the question is, we can deal with it now, but how long is this going to go on for? And they keep asking me that, and I wish I had an answer.
I want to jump over to the unknowns and the anxiety and other effects that has had on society. We've all seen it, but I was going to say as well, it's interesting too, the ages of the children, because, my three littlest, we basically say that they're Irish triplets, twins that are, 3.5, and my son is about 10 months older. So they really are practically like triplets. And in many ways, when I look at them, I mean, they have like their own daycare. I mean, for everyone around them, our heads are exploding, and, because they're having the time, but so I really can say that I don't see a ton of impact on them in the negative.
Okay.
But as far as on my 12-year-old, it's funny. You think, what can you do? You can't take them somewhere. You can't say, let's go pick you out a new outfit. Let's go to your favorite, Shake Shack. Let's do, nothing. And, I remember like about the first week into it, and I knew that she was feeling down and sad, as a lot of kids are. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do humor. She's homeschooling. I come in, I'm like, hey, how was your day, sweetie? Whatever. You get a little, and I'm like, well, who did you hang out with at lunch today? And I'm thinking, at least that's gonna, and you just get this look like, dude.
I know.
Dude. You're like,
well, and teenage or tween girls are, they're at that stage where the friends are everything, and that's so important. So I feel her pain and your pain as the dad.
I think she thinks I'm her pain. But that's okay. That's okay. She'll come back around.
She will. It's funny. My 12-year-old at his school, he has like two really close friends, and they during lunch or during break, they'll just hang out in the stairwell, which sounds very unsanitary to me, but whatever. That's what they do. And they have this little stairwell bee gang. And when this whole thing started happening and he was homeschooling, I said, oh, that's too bad. I guess stairwell B is not happening. He's like, oh no, we have a Zoom chat. It's called Stairwell B chat. I was like, oh, that's great.
I mean, that's the imagination. When you're talking about, the unknowns and the anxiety, which is across the board. I mean, you're a medical expert with a ton of background. In the very beginning, when everybody was lined up, taking toilet paper off the shelves, paper towel, whatever, there's two different ways. You're either part of that, or you're kind of like myself in the beginning, like, oh, please, these people are overly panicked. It's silly. But then pretty quickly you start to realize, that whatever it is, whether it's the virus, which we now know it's more of than perhaps anyone realized or that we're told. And then separately, whether it's the panic itself, which is a real thing, but were you one of those people at any point, have you been stocking up on stuff at any point, or have you just kind of maintained, hey man, we're going to be fine?
I'm a natural optimist. I also, I'm not someone who panics. So I did not stock up at all until they made the announcement for, the stay at home, or I think they call it New York on pause, where we were told to stay at home. And even then I did not stock up for, months. I stocked up for like, if I can't leave my house for 2 weeks, do we have enough to last for 2 weeks? I kind of did it like that. And I did, any prescription medications that my kids take or I take, I made sure I had like an extra month of that just in case. But that was the extent of it. I just couldn't envision a scenario where we wouldn't have access to some of the basic necessities. Like, we're not maybe going to have our favorite type of granola, but like, we're not going to starve. I didn't think that was an issue. And so, I definitely was not stocking up on the toilet paper. I think we have like a good 5 days worth at the moment. And I'm sure if we need more, we can. I will say I have a bidet. So maybe that gave me a sense of comfort. That was sent to me like a couple of years ago from a company. And that's the backup plan.
And I want to touch back in a little bit on the medical shortages and like the realities that artists can come through. But, one of the things here in California, and this was news all over the country, and it's funny because you sent me a note that you said, I read your name in the newspaper. Normally when someone says that to me, I'm wondering what I did to get in trouble this time. And I'm like, But, in California,
your name and guns, Drew, that's always a little bit scary.
And I'm really not a general gun person.
I know you're not.
The visual appearance may imply otherwise, but so no, I mean, I was at, this is funny when you said that you had read that article in USA Today, that they quoted me, and they didn't actually use my best quote, but that's okay. I was just online, and I remember I was at the gym a couple of weeks ago, may have been 3-4 weeks ago at this point. And I remember it was the first day at the gym where social distancing, the term, they just started to come on. And it is funny because you think of, like you just mentioned, New York on pause and social. And I honestly think that they must have hired like some slick ad agency.
Like marketing genius.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, this is the crap people pay us money for all day long to come up with. They could have come up with like New York on pause. I mean, that's just something about that. Maybe we should be more realistic but
I know, maybe we should do New York Rewind or New York Fast Forward actually to when this is all over.
Honestly, instead of social distancing, how about stay the F away? That would be a really good campaign. We can have T-shirts and hats, and maybe everyone could have like a little mini like bullhorn, like, stay the F away, and then we'd smile and wave. But I think we have to stop being so like marketing oriented in these terms. But I'm at the gym and I start seeing these signs: social distancing, every other treadmill, elliptical, weight machine. I'm like, I'm taking pictures. I'm putting them on my Instagram. Well, this is social, and you start, the reality hasn't grasped. And then one of the things hits me. It's like a Sunday morning, and I'm like, man, I don't have any, real household security, protection, firearms. And I
Yeah.
did many years ago. And when our 3 little ones came home, my wife very understandably said,
Yeah.
with so many little kids now, no matter how you lock up, we live in a nice area, I'd feel better, I'd sleep. I said, no problem. I wasn't a hunter. I wasn't in it for the
Yeah.
game. It really was home security. And I got rid of my guns and sold one and gave one to a cop who's a good friend of mine. So I knew it was
Mhm.
safe going to a good
Yeah.
place. So now it's about a month ago, and I'm like, you know what? Just absolute worst case, all these things. Who would have thought all the toilet paper would be gone? Who'd have thought that they're talking about medicine? I'll sleep better, worst case scenario. On the way
Yeah.
home from the gym, I go to stop at what they have out here, Turner's Outdoor Sports, which I think is a big nationwide chain, but
Okay.
it's a hunting store, outdoor store, so they sell a lot of firearms. And as I go to pull up, it's a Sunday morning, I noticed that none of the stores at all in the whole strip mall have any cars. None of them are open. Then I see like a line around the corner, and they're all lined up for Turner's Outdoor Sports. Uh,
Wow.
and not to profile anyone, but most of the people look like me, and that's
Yeah.
never like an inviting sign. Like you get out and you're like, why are 150, 200 people who
Yeah,
look
you
like
wouldn't want to
me
meet yourself in a dark
online
alley.
outside of the gun store? So I find parking in some barbecue store like 3 blocks away that doesn't even open till noon because that's the only place
Yeah.
to park. I get on the line and I realize the store doesn't even open for about an hour and a half, and we're all in line. And all of a sudden, there's like this one guy who comes like walking down, older looking gentleman. He's kind of got like a Mr. Rogers sweater vest on and an old school reporter's notepad and pencil. And this is the guy from USA Today. And he looks at me and looks at all these people. And obviously, he's aware of the story. By then, people were aware
Yeah.
that people were lining up for home security or what have you. And there was a panic ensuing to a degree. Um, I don't think I was panicked. I was trying to be, methodical, but
Yeah.
and then the guy looks at me and he goes, what do you think all these people are online for at this store today that sells guns? I mean, it's about an hour and a half before they open. There's about 200 people. Why do you think they're all here? I look up at the sign behind me and it says Turner Outdoor Sport, and all of a sudden, I'm like, I don't think it's because it's the start of duck season. You know? And
Yeah.
it's like, these, and
Yeah.
that's not the quote that they put in USA Today. They used a different
Right.
one, but it's funny. And a lot of my friends saw that, and people I work with and colleagues, and they know that I'm, not someone who's a hunter or a huge gun person. And they just said, hey, what's going on? I said, it's the unknowns. There is anxiety. If it was myself alone, I wouldn't think twice. No, I would not have bought anything. Even if it was myself and my wife, I don't know. But
Yeah.
you have children, you have people
Yes.
that you are responsible for that you worry about more than anything else, and that
Yep.
ensues. I don't know that people are buying toilet paper off the shelves at mad rates for themselves or their family and others. And if someone needs something that I love, I want to provide for them or protect them, whether it's a firearm or what have you. So I think that that's where.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think this is a time where everyone's affected, but in different ways. And you can't assume that you know how people are being affected or what's going on in their homes or their personal lives. And, you were talking about when we were chatting the other day about trying to get supplies for your kids and how, there are these rations on how many of each item you can get. And for one of your kids in particular, you said, you can only have like a certain amount of foods. And so you needed to get more than one and kind of being judged for that. And I feel like there's been a lot. I think it is one of those good moments for us to really try to like step out of our own perspective and realize so many people have other perspectives. I read something the other day about, a lot of people with kids who are going through the homeschooling and it's difficult and are kind of like making their sort of snide remarks about the people who don't have kids. Like, oh, well, they have it so easy right now. What are they complaining about? But you don't know who's maybe trying to have kids, whose fertility treatment was just canceled, in the 11th hour, so you just never know what people are going through. And it's tough if you're single. It's tough if you're married. It's tough if you're divorced. You're saying a lot of divorces are going to happen after all this. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
They
mean,
saw that in China.
but it is.
But it is a good reminder to just like get out of your own head and try to think about what other people are dealing with
We do. I mean, I honestly have tried to tell myself from the beginning, and some days I'm better at it than others. And when I
Yeah.
fall short, I try to remind myself and kick myself. Maybe I should do it harder. But really, it's the best days are if you try to put someone else ahead of you. Obviously, you're going to put your family, your kids, your loved ones ahead of you intuitively, unless you're just a really warped human being. But really, where that's interesting is like when it comes to strangers, and honestly,
Yeah.
that's kind of gotten me through some of these last few weeks of unknown and concerns is because the second I start to think about myself, honestly, it gets pretty, it could close in a little bit and get
Yeah.
claustrophobic. And, there's that risk of feeling sorry for you. Well, who doesn't have a reason to feel sorry for yourself right now, whether it's,
Sure.
business, stress with kids, families, life, the world economic, seeing people dying every day. But I remember someone saying one time, and I always remembered it, is that the second you feel sorry for yourself is the moment you lose. And I really encourage other people as well, just try to put someone else ahead of you, do something nice. And that's been very helpful in a lot of ways, even if it's something small and something that you don't expect something for. But, it's interesting because you mentioned my son on the flip side, and this brings up the whole thing that we are all in the same boat, but we're not. And I think it's something
Right.
that people have to be aware of because my son, and this a little more than certainly most, but he has one of the most rare conditions in the world to a degree, medical condition. So it's been, especially hard. And again, that doesn't minimize anyone else's condition, but it made me think more, and it's made my wife be more aware of what other people are going through because we're not all in the same boat. Meaning,
Right.
he can eat 5 or 6 different foods in the world total. So
Wow.
to try to find those foods under normal circumstance are a process, and to try to find them now. There have been days where I've had to go to 7, 8, 9 stores. The last thing you should be doing from a safety
I
for
know.
myself and to try to find, no, it's not there. No, it's sold out. So, and his medicines and his trial drug and things that are doctors saying, we don't know that we'll be able to have this in 3, 4 months because, so you add that level of anxiety and unknown. And I remember in specific being at a local grocery store, one day where they had one of the foods and it was like miracle going off, and I'm taking off my gloves and my mask and texting my wife like, oh my God, they have it. Thank God, this is one of the handful of foods that he actually can eat, not taste or preference or because he's a finicky eater from like, it's like a life or death type thing.
Right.
And I put, I think 4 in my basket, and there were probably 20. They just put the whole thing on it. And it was a type of veal. I mean, people don't even eat a lot of veal. Usually we ask the supermarket to order for a special. It's a rare type of, so you get to the front, and all of a sudden at the checkout thing, the young lady working there, I'm sure she's a wonderful person. That's why I would never, try to pinpoint anyone. Without even looking, just starts to take 3 of them out and says, there's 1 per limit, 1 per family, 1. And I go, oh, no. They know us here. And my son has this. And she's just, I'm sorry. And she just keeps moving. Like I said, no, my son's on, compassionate care. Do you know what that means? He's literally one of the, he can only eat. And the woman just kind of snaps at very rude. She goes, you know what? We're all in the same boat. Everybody's in the same boat. And I was so livid. And again, it's where I was like, and I just stood there because there really wasn't a great response. I didn't want to elevate it. I didn't want to scream at someone. I didn't want to intimidate anyone. And I just remember, and ultimately she's like, fine, but don't do it again. And I was like, I took the meat because it was,
you need it.
But I remember I couldn't like speak or even process for like an hour or 2, even after I got home. It made me think, but that's not right. We keep hearing that we're all in this together. We are, but we're not all in the same boat. And I thought about, what about, single moms? How does a single mom go out and shop? One, who watches her kids? You can't bring people in to watch them. It's unsafe. And what if she gets sick? She's the only person in the family or a single dad. So we're not all in the same boat. What about all of the families who have children with a lot of medical issues? We're certainly, there's millions. It's not just us, our family. What about all of those families and how difficult, and children who can't get to their physical therapies? What about the disabled who are in wheelchairs? Life was hard enough before. What about now? So I do think it's something that, it's nice that we're making early hours for the elderly, and I have no issue with that. I think it's wonderful. But I think we just kind of really stopped very quickly and short and just forgot about how to, as a society, be more looking out for each other. It's just that's not business.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned and hopefully will be learned coming out of this. Still now, it would be great to do it now. But I think, like you said, there'll be a lot of kind of gaps and disparities that are going to be highlighted by this entire situation. And, for example, I'm sure you've heard just in the last couple of days, they've been talking about a disproportionately high number of African Americans who are getting COVID, getting very sick from COVID and dying from it. And, what are the reasons behind that? And there are so many different factors that are being considered, from everything from, do they have more medical problems, that we know put you at greater risk? Or is it an economic issue or a healthcare access issue? Or is it, the essential workers, the people that have to go to work are more African American, or, so there's a lot of things that are kind of being highlighted or coming out of the woodwork that we need to face as a nation and as a society that I think we'll be talking about for a while after this is all over. Hopefully we will be. Hopefully people don't just forget and, go back to business as usual. But yeah, it is affecting everyone. But, we've been talking so much about lack of control. I do want to, at some point, for us to talk about what we can control and some of the things we can do proactively, because I think that's one of the things that's going to help us all mentally get through it, is knowing, okay, I can't control if that person breathes on me from 10 feet away and the wind blows in my direction, but I can control some things about my body and how resilient I am and how I'm helping my immune system.
Yes,
so
let's talk about that. I know that also you, as the medical expert that you are, have narrowed it down. Not that it's only, but you have these 5 tips or hacks to really take care of yourself in the quarantine situation. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, I want to maybe go over 5 categories that you should be paying attention to, and I can definitely give you tips for each one. But I think top of mind for everyone right now, of course, is germs, right? And how to not contract the virus, how to not spread it, and if someone's sick that's close to you, how to not get it from them. So we all know about, now we just talked about wearing masks, when you're outside, or covering in some way. But what's important is when you're in your home, making sure that you're really thoroughly disinfecting the high touch surfaces. So that's the kitchen counters, the refrigerator handles, your cell phone, door handles, bathroom countertops. And you want to use something that has a high level of bleach or at least 70% alcohol. The good news is most of the household disinfectants that are sold in the store do have that, but just double check to make sure. This isn't the time, quite honestly, to be going for the super all natural, made in someone's basement kind of thing. Like, you want to make sure that this really has the disinfectant level that you need. Yeah. And then, right now, a lot of people are getting COVID and are not going to the hospital. In fact, at least here in New York, because of capacity, you're not told to even go get a test or see a doctor unless you're quite ill. You're told to stay at home and kind of deal with the symptoms on your own until they get severe. So there are a lot of people that are living at home with COVID right now, and many of them have roommates or, loved ones, family members that live in the same home. So again, in terms of the germs and transferring the germs, keeping that sick person as isolated as possible. So they should have their own bedroom. They should have their own dedicated bathroom if possible. That's not always possible depending on the living situation. But having their, we talked about the grocery stores having the hours that are early for the elderly. You almost kind of want to do that for the sick person in the house. Like, okay, they can use the kitchen if they need to in the morning, but then it's disinfected and they don't use it again really for the rest of the day. It sounds kind of mean, but like, as sick as someone is, you don't want to have anyone else in the family getting sick, because this is a disease where we used to think young people don't get seriously ill. They can get seriously ill. It's not as common, but it can happen. And we're seeing young people on ventilators. And so everyone in the household has to be very careful. So that's from a germ perspective. Then in terms of overall health, there's so many other things that we can and should be doing to really boost our health and our immunity. So diet is a huge one. I am a huge believer that you are what you eat, and what you put in your body is going to help you fight off any type of infection, any kind of disease that may confront you. So right now, the flip side of that is people are home. They're very prone to eating unhealthy foods. We're stressed out. We're reaching for the comfort food. We're eating our feelings. We're going to the supermarket and, people aren't grabbing the vegetables. They're grabbing the chips and the pretzels and just whatever looks good at that moment. But you don't want to be putting junk in your body. You really want to try to focus on high antioxidant foods. So those are berries, green leafy vegetables, spinach, kale. And by the way, frozen vegetables are great. They keep their nutrients. So that's totally fine to keep a bunch in your freezer and just use them as needed. I also love nuts as a snack. This is a really healthy, fat, satiating way to fill yourself up instead of the chips and things like that. This is actually a healthy way to feel full in between meals. So that's a great immunity booster as well. And then, whole grains are also very important. A lot of whole grains also have zinc in them, which is really good for immunity. and the citrus fruits with vitamin C. So these are all really good ways to keep your kind of health on track. You're not going to gain the quarantine 15, which, any any weight you gain, remember, it's not like it's going to miraculously go away once we go outside. It's like these things take a long time to get rid of. So you don't want to put it on in the first place. And you just want to feel your best and be as healthy as you can right now. So that's diet.
Yeah.
Then we go on to sleep, which a lot of people don't realize there's a huge connection between sleep and your overall health and your immune system. So it's not easy right now. We're stressed, we're anxious right before bed, we're watching the news. I always, as a rule, recommend stopping all devices at least half an hour, preferably an hour before you go to sleep. But right now, that's more important than ever because every device is talking about a very anxiety-provoking subject, which is COVID. So, and I have to force myself too, because I want to be up to date and the news is changing like by the hour. But I realize like whatever happens an hour before I go to bed can wait until the morning. It's going to affect my sleep. Just that blue light itself from the TV, from the computer screen or the phone can interfere with your melatonin production. So cut it off. The other thing is our routines are very different right now. You may not have to get up as early as you used to. I was talking about my kids who can sleep a little bit later, but it is important to have a regular wake up time and a regular bedtime. Keep to that schedule. Even if you have no work calls, nothing planned, get yourself out of bed because that's also good for your circadian rhythm, and kind of just being exposed to the sunlight even through the window is important to kind of keep your sleep on track.
And it's immunity.
Exercise.
Immunity. That's what you keep saying. Everything's about
immunity. Yeah.
Immunity.
Totally. And then exercise, another huge immune booster. Regular exercise will help those immune cells in your body be more robust and fight better. So it sounds crazy, but one of the worst things about this, other than of course people being sick and dying, was when my gym closed. Like to me, I was like, how am I going to deal with my gym closing? Because that to me is the big stress release. And I pivoted. It took me a few days, but I said, all right, I've never done a YouTube exercise video in my life, but I'm going to start doing it. And you need to do something, preferably every day. It doesn't need to be for a long time, but at least 30 minutes if you can. Carve that out. Do it with your kids if they're around. My kids just watch and criticize me and make fun of me, and that's okay too. But do something. And there's some fun ones. I've done everything from Bollywood dance to salsa to hip hop. And, now I just kind of do this high intensity thing, which it's great. It's just something to keep me moving, get my heart pumping, get the muscles moving. And all of this is not only good for your health and your immunity, but for your mental health as well. And that's the last.
I'm sorry, you and I were sharing some texts before of some videos that we found or something that the kids can dance to in front of the TV at night, which is moving and laughing. And I was sending that to you, and you're like, I got to get this. I'm like, it's $25 for the year, and the kids get off the couch at least, and you feel like they're laughing and happy. So it's hard. It's not as mindless, but there are some things we can be sharing with and tips and doing to help other parents with their own kids. And
definitely. No, I love that. Seeing your daughter dance, it got me in a good mood. So that was awesome.
You're like, I need this.
I need it. And speaking of mood, that's kind of the last category that is very important to talk about. And, there are so many people in this country who have anxiety or depression. And for them, this is a particularly hard time because their condition gets worse, understandably. But even if you don't have that sort of pre-existing issue, all of us are feeling this in so many ways for so many reasons, and it can be really debilitating at times. So, what can you do to manage that stress? Like we talked about exercise. I think that plays a huge role. I actually think there's a big connection between diet and mood as well. And all of the foods that we just talked about are foods that we think really do improve your mood, as opposed to the high sugar foods and the high carb foods that tend to actually seem to depress your mood. Like you get like a rush, but then you get a crash. And so that's not good for your mood. But in terms of mental health kind of tips that you can use, if you're not a meditation person, if you don't know how to do it, there are many apps that make it really simple to just do like a 10-minute deep breathing exercise. Calm is one, Simply Being. There are many out there. There are other apps now. There's something called Personal Zen, which is like almost like a video game, but it actually trains your mind to see things in a more positive light. There are a lot of resources out there that can help with managing stress. Again, I think social interaction, you're talking about your daughter not being able to see her friends, but using the Zoom, and for all of us, not just kids, connecting with people, like making that girls' night out with your 3 girlfriends, and actually, putting on some makeup and wearing a cute outfit, and just kind of getting yourself out there, quote unquote, but like laughing.
Virtually, right? These are the virtual get-togethers, and I've seen virtual happy hour. Okay, and the quarantini, the martini
Yes.
quarantini. And again, I know on the flip side, it's hey, watch alcohol consumption, be aware.
Right.
But again, socialization. So if you're having a drink or two, how to make it more social instead of just sitting on the couch. And I love what you're saying, and you're starting to see more and more. A dear friend of mine who lives in Texas. He's always been just one of the most wonderful human beings. He sent me some stuff that I looked at 4 or 5 in the morning the other day that really it made my day. I've shared it with so many other people, and his daughter had homecoming, and it was going to be such a big deal. And now they have a family of 7, and which is a big family.
Oh wow!
I think that's small by Texas standards, but anywhere else that's a big family.
Everything's big in Texas. That's true. Okay.
And he showed me these little video clips, and I mean, the whole family, they were on the dance floor. They had the little lights, and it's just his own immediate family. And then at the end of the evening, my friend announces this big announcement and crowns his daughter the homecoming queen. And it just was like, and I'm like, man, this is the stuff, and it's so helpful. And it's interesting. I know, the dichotomy of up and down. I mean, when I was leaving my house this morning for the drive here to the office, and again, 8,000 square feet, only 2 people in here were wearing masks. And I'm going through some of my packages, and you look at like what we're dealing with right now. And again, when I'm out and about now, people take photos and they're posting it on social media. I'm wearing and maybe it's extreme, but for me, I can't bring germs home. The risk of that.
I know, with your kids, I know.
With my son in specific, but my other kids. So I'm wearing this pseudo hazmat suit. Each day I'm adding something new. And I walk in today, and this is no joke. This was what I ordered a while ago. It was on my doorstep this morning. And I put it on for it. It is not a prop. I mean, it showed up today. And I'm like, I got to show Dr. Raj. But,
oh, wow.
And now I'll take it off in a second because it's hard to hear. This is
amazing.
This is what goes through. And I am not what you would call a prepper. I am not I don't prep anything.
Yeah, I didn't ask you actually. Did you stock up on a lot? I mean, the gear clearly, but
I went from 0 to 100 at a certain point. And oddly enough, and I don't know, it was like the day that they closed the gyms. I was like, that is, and it wasn't that was so crippling to me. I have some stuff at home I could use, but that's serious because it's LA, man. I mean, that's like saying we're turning off the food and the water. The water supply is shut off. I mean, that's way when you shut the system. I'm like, there's going to be, and then when I started to realize and the gravity, not that I don't have the gravity about my son's normal situation, but also realized, man, this could be for weeks and months. And if toilet paper is really running out and hand sanitizer is really running out, what if all the what ifs started to come. And it wasn't panic per se, but it's that 4 or 5 in the morning, your alone time, and you're thinking through, and you can't see anything good. The numbers everything is so, and you sit there and you do feel out of control, and you say, I need to be prepared in any scenario of what if I need to take him to the hospital? I can't get sick.
Right.
I go down. And it's funny, but again, I go into grocery stores, and I've gone from the guy who wasn't even an early adopter of any mask, period.
Yeah.
Now, when I get out of my car, I mean, people are taking video. I don't have to worry about social distancing. They see me in my outfit and my garb, and they stay back 30 feet. They think I must have the bubonic plague or Ebola,
right.
Because they're running as they're taking video, and you're just like, hey, man, it really is we don't know. It's unknowns. And I would love for this to be done in a week and take all of this stuff and put it somewhere and never touch it again. But at the same point, it's a matter of unknowns. And you bring it up. Is there anything on the last side of it? And we're so lucky to tap into you. I got very fortunate to be able to hit you up with questions without telemedicine at times. But not everybody can do that. Is there anything in addition? You mentioned your 5 tips and things for home, which all are go back to immunity and diet and exercise and meditation and how to clean your germs. that people can be doing, and I guess it varies if you're a single person, a couple with children, to almost give yourself a treat. I don't know. I mean, you can't really massage yourself. Maybe a couple can do that, but anything that you recommend or have come across that's almost like a treat, self-indulgence, or
Oh, I like that. I think maybe it's kind of like if you're with someone else, whether it's a family member or a child or whatever, like kind of giving each other a treat. So for me, it's like making a meal that I know and I'm not a huge cook by any means, but like getting the food, the dish that I know my kids love, and preparing it for them. And for them, for me, like, giving me like that hour of quiet time so I can take a nap where they're not yelling their heads off, like I think maybe gifting people little things. My mom is here in the city and she's living alone. So I brought her a bunch of groceries, and she's elderly. So, and I was still at that point going to the office and I didn't want her to be, so I just dropped it with her doorman, but like we FaceTimed after. I think it's kind of treating each other is a good thing on your own. I mean, I am a huge fan of long baths with candles and aromatherapy, and that definitely gets me, calm and relaxed. And then, of course, I can't go a whole hour without mentioning Tula, my skincare line, and the fact that we have amazing masks, which are a very self-indulgent sort of pamper yourself moment.
They're different than my mask, right? We're talking about different masks. I just want to make sure
totally different.
Okay.
In fact, we have a mask for mask program right now where if you buy a certain mask, we donate a mask to New York City frontline people. But yeah, we have different kind of masks, soothing masks that actually make you feel great and pampered. So I guess those would be my indulgences. What about you? What do you do at home to feel good?
Yeah, I think if we can get the kids laughing and all playing and having fun, I mean, that's kind of medicine. You say that's
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
It's better.
Yeah, we've been playing a lot of board games that we never played before. And just when I see them happy and engaged and not thinking about all this other stuff, that makes it all better. Yeah. So, yeah.
If I didn't ask you this one thing, and I know you'll probably, it's a tough one, but and everyone wants to ask you, if you had your crystal ball, just based on what you're seeing, would you even take a guess of when do we really start to see this wrap up? How long and
I think part of it depends on where you are in the country. I don't think it's going to be like a hard stop blanket for the entire nation. I do think I'm hopeful that things are turning around a bit in New York City, which is the hardest hit as of right now. And it's going to happen. It's going to spread in other cities. But New York is uniquely situated to have the worst in terms of the public transit system, the way people live in apartments. I think we're going to have it still worse than other cities may have it in the future. So for New York, I feel like, and again, no crystal ball, this may turn out to not be true, but I feel like by end of May, we may be back to some kind of normalcy. And that, part of this depends on testing. That's a huge factor in terms of when we can get back to normal. Because if we have a test, and these tests exist, but how soon they can be rolled out and how widespread they can be. If we have a test that tells people if they've had it and they're immune. So a lot of people are getting this and they don't realize it, right? They're asymptomatic. But if you can take a test that says, yes, Drew, you've had it, you're fine, you can go back to work, you can go back to your office, you can go do shoots, you can do whatever. You don't have to worry about your kids, because you're fine. You've had it and you're now immune, you can't get it again. If we can get a bunch of tests like that to a huge percentage of the population, that would really, kind of lead the path towards getting back to normal functioning in our society. And then that just tells you if you've had it. Then we also need more of the tests that tell you if you actively had it right now. We don't even have enough of those at the moment. But once we get the combination of both of those in very large numbers, and they're expecting to have that, at least in New York, within a few weeks, then we'll kind of see what happens. It is going to be strange, though, because I don't know exactly how it's going to work. It's going to be one of these two-tiered societies where the people who've had it can work and they can maybe even travel. But the people who haven't, what happens to them? So it's strange, and I don't know how it's all going to shake out, but I do feel like towards the end of May, early June, hopefully we're going to be somewhat back to functioning.
And you believe, or not believe, but you're the medical expert, because I've been unclear on this, that if someone has had it, is it relatively believed or proven? I don't know how to be proven that you are,
Yeah.
or you can't get it twice?
Yeah. So early on in this disease, we weren't sure what the answer was to that question, but it now looks like, based on a lot of smarter scientists than I am who've looked at this carefully, that there is immunity. So, meaning once you've had it, you can't get it again for a certain period of time. That might not be true for the rest of your life, but at least for a year or more. So, at least to wait out this situation in this season, it should be, you should be fine. If
And there are
have
other people who would be immune not having it just based on a system or a test. Is that right or not right? Could you be immune if you've never had it? Is there something in
No,
okay.
no. For this particular virus, you would only be immune if you've had it because it's such a new virus. And yeah, that's the only way you would have developed antibodies to it. But there is this concept of what's called herd immunity, so that, let's say we find that 80% or 90% of the population has had it,
Right.
whether they had symptoms or not, then it's going to kind of die out just for that reason. That so many people have had it, they're not going to get it again. The virus isn't going to have enough people to really spread in a significant manner. So even that 10% that doesn't have it, they don't really have to worry because so many other people have had it. There's not room for it to spread, and it should kind of die out on its own.
Yeah.
We don't know what that number is yet. We still have to do the testing to see.
Well, listen, to have your expertise, I hope we can do this again. I know you've got so many exciting things. People are going to be seeing a lot more of you upcoming, and that's always a wonderful thing. And, even speaking with you the other day and reminding everyone else that, some of the other tragedies for people and all this to be aware of, cases of domestic violence are
Yes.
on the rise, people stuck at home in an abusive relationship, child abuse on the rise, people stuck at home. We touched on single moms and how much harder it is for them, people with disabilities. So I think, speaking with you and your optimism and everything that you bring, I think that's something for us all to take forward and just, be aware of, that we're all in this together, but we're not all in the same boat. A lot of us are a lot more fortunate. I know I am. And I know you live a very blessed, wonderful life. So hopefully there's a lot of opportunity for us all to, come together and grow together through this. And I appreciate you very much.